Hello ladies and gents, another video brought to you by Outworld, and today I'll be talking about my messing nodas and how they don't mess about. I mean, I'm not even joking. You put a little bit of food in there, as you'll see in a bit, and they just go crazy. I mean, literally crazy. And it's like all hands on deck. It's not just the majors and the workers. Even some of the queens come out and have a go. Crazy. But it's been a while since we've seen these girls, so let's check out their nest and see what's going down. So as you guys know, this is their current setup. I've got the Cushy MS nests 5.5 stacked on top of each other, and I've got the S3 Outworld attached to that as well. But to tell you the truth, I need a bigger Outworld. I mean, I'm not talking about the Solenopsis sized Outworld because I've generally not got the space for it. So I'm going to need to start thinking about a solution in some shape or form. And before I forget, if you check the link in the top right corner now, you can see the playlist of these girls, which is getting quite big now, to be honest. Anyway, so this is the top nest, or the top of the double-decker nest I've got. And as you can see, it's quite sparsely populated as previously what we've seen. But if I take the macro lens, things get a bit more interesting. Now, I'm going to apologise now. I am testing out my new lenses, so things are a bit jittery at the moment, but I will get better, I swearsies. But as you can see here, I've got a nice little blanket of brood on the bottom, and I've got loads of majors, which are good because your majors are your larders. They're the storage for all your food and stuff like that. Now, if you remember in my last video about the queens, I counted like 40 odd queens plus, I think it was, can't remember off the top of my head. But there is a lot more queens now than there was. But, and you'll notice as we do the macro shots, I have not got anywhere near as many winged queens. Now, I do apologise for the macro lenses, I'm getting a grip of it, I swear these. But if you see here, this hasn't got much going on. It used to be a tip area until they moved it all into the Outworld, which I'll show you a bit about that in a second. Now, it is an indication the nest is too big for them, but also you need space for them to expand. Now, in nature, they do build chambers and they do fill it full of rubbish, but then they seal it off, which is good for the environment because it puts nutrients back into the soil, which is good. But we can't replicate that here. So you kind of need to manage the size of your nest compared to your colonies. But I'm not too fussed about that at the moment, and I am digressing. But if we carry on looking, you can see it's not as sparsely populated. There is a male there and a couple of wing males and a couple of wing females, but generally speaking, nowhere near as much as I used to have. They have different areas of brood at the moment, and I think that's because I took the red filter off and left them for a while and have moved brood around a little bit. But most of the brood is definitely centrally located around this area here. And to tell you the truth, out of the two nests that they've got, most of the brood is definitely up on this top layer. And what's interesting here for a behaviour note is that in these areas is where you get most of your small workers as well compared to the nest. Majors don't really lurk around here. Yes, there's some queens here, but generally speaking, it's just the small workers tending to brood, which seems to be their role, to be honest. That and all the workload in the Outworld as well, but you'll see that in a bit too. Now, as you can see, yes, like I said, there is a couple of wing queens, but I've got a lot of non-wing queens now, which you'll see in the bottom nest, mainly in a second. Now, this is the second nest, or the bottom tier of the double-decker, and you can see here there's a lot more bigger blobs, and that's because most of the majors and most of the queens are chilling out in this bottom nest. But if we check this out with a macro lens, you'll see that, well, it looks a bit sparse here, but most of the queens are chilling here, like I said. Now, there's not a lot of brood here, and there is not a lot of smaller workers compared, I mean, there's a couple of bits of brood there, as you've seen, but there's not a lot of smaller workers. It seems to be dominated mainly by majors and queens. And just, you've seen a clip just then, I missed it, but you'll see there what I mean about the majors being the larders, like here. A lot of their abdomen, or whatever the hell the bum's called, is full with food and stuff like that, and they generally store it. And this is kind of the issue, I think, when people buy Pheidoles from retailers, because it's only natural or normal for them to have a crash with the stress of shipping and stuff like that. And because they haven't got the workers to store the food, or the majors to store the food, then they need to get out and get feeding straight away. And if they're being disturbed a lot, then they won't do that. And I think that's why a lot of Pheidoles crash, or maybe why I've messed up Pheidoles in the past. So recommendation for any form of Pheidole: as soon as you get them, leave them alone, feed them, touch an Outworld, feed them, leave them alone, and then hopefully, like mine, they'll pick up and do well. Now, there is a burst of eggs and smaller, younger larvae down here, and I think that's because most of the queens are chilling down here. But they seem to, as it gets a bit bigger, move it up to the top tier. But then saying that though, I've just got one that's nearly ready to pupate there, so I'll eat my words. But generally, as a rule of thumbs, they're on the top floor, swearsies. But as you can see, there is a lot of queens, and I have not removed any of the queens. Well, I have but I will talk about that later in this video. And like I said, there is small pockets of brood and stuff like that, but most of it's upstairs, as it were, in the top deck. But the queen just fell over then, did you see it? Now, like I said before, I have taken the covers off these and left them for a little while, and I think that is why these tubes are packed full of workers and brood, because I've disturbed them. There isn't a pack full of brood, but there's a lot of workers there. Now, they pretty much occupied this as soon as I took the filter off, and now the filter's back on and they're chilling out. They're nowhere near as many in the tube as there was, apart from the ones going to the Outworld, so I've just recently fed them. But like I said, I just think this is more of a, I've taken the cover off, there's light in there and they don't like it, so they've moved into the tunnels. But just to book a trend, you'll see these fresh eggs. Now, these fresh eggs are actually in the top tier of the nest, and I think that the queens up here are also laying eggs. Now, I didn't know if my queens that pulled the wings off, or the new queens that pulled the wings off, were actually reproducing, but I've got a sneaky suspicion they are. And if they are, I don't have a massive concern, because I think my population is going to go boom again. And I did notice a die off, but they've definitely recovered from it. So this is the Outworld, and as you can see, it is difficult to clean because this is general activity you find it in the moment. So trying to pick out the rubbish is insanely hard, and they tend to process the exoskeletons down quite a fair bit as well. So trying to pick them out at the right time is also difficult. But you'll also notice a queen there as well. But I will go into more about the queens in a bit. But like I said, this is the rubbish area, and this is why it's difficult to clean out, because they're always busy over the top of it as well. So cleaning them out is practically near on impossible. Now, trying to pick all that out individually will be an absolute nightmare with just a pair of tweezers. So I decided to go a bit reckless. There's escapee there, but it's because I've been cleaning them previously, is get my trusty hoover and suck up a little bit like that at a time. Then I have to go over, and once I've got hoovered up a little bit of it, and I've really got bad angles here, by the way. Now, it is a pain in the bum because you do get a load of escapees, but it's just about policing them up. So then I have to get the container where it keeps all the rubbish, should I say, and then try and pick them out with a cotton wool bud. Now, you can see me here with a cotton wool there. I think that was an escapee I actually picked up rather than actually from the hoover itself. But then, as you can see, what am I doing? That's it. I'm hoovering a bit more up here because, like I said, I skipped out a bit. And then I open it up, as you can see I'm doing here, tap as much of it, the rubbish, back into it as I can, because there's ants all over the hoover part of it as well. And then, that's my dog trying to get in, so excuse the noise from her for a second. So then I tap off what I've got, and you can see they're going all over my hand, and there's loads in there. So I just get a cotton wool tip, or a Q-tip if you're American and weird, and pick up as many as I can and drop them in. This is laborious, it is tiring, it is boring in many ways. But with small ants, they're just a nightmare to clean out, because generally small ants go through a high population, which means they have a good turnover, they get a lot of dead ants, and you have to clean them out, because otherwise it's not great for your ants. I left that a little bit too long, as always, because I hate cleaning them out, as you could probably guess with my tone at the moment. But it needs to be done, and this is how I do it, to be honest. I generally don't think it's really efficient to do it any other way. You could clean up as you go along, but when they get to the size that mine do, it doesn't take long for them to start building up the rubbish. And because they like to store their rubbish in the nest as well, and then randomly overnight they'll just move all that rubbish back into the Outworld. So you might clean it all out and guaranteed by the next day you'll have a load more. But I think my nests are quite clean at the moment, so hopefully I can try and keep on top of it, but probably won't because it's me. Now I'm just about to feed them. I'm going to change up the music because this bit's cool. These ladies' ability to recruit workers is crazy. I mean, I've just dropped it in and look how many are on it already. Now I am flipping it over on its back, so bear with it a second. And the reason for that is because I don't want it moving around outside my camera shot. Yes, I have killed it. I've put a scissors snip right down the middle of it to sever its main nerve cluster, as it were, and to stop it from being able to crawl all over the place. But the natural movement of the nervous system as it dies will make it crawl all over the place. That's why I generally put my cockroaches on the back when I've killed them. Now, already, as you can see here, it is busy. They are literally swarming it now, and it doesn't take long for them to get all over the kill. And as you can see from here, with that little drop in to now, which I don't even know how long it's been, maybe like 30 seconds, they're all getting all over it. And it's not just the majors and the workers that get involved. As you can see at the bottom of the screen, you've just missed her out of shot, but I think she comes back in a second. The queens get involved as well. There's another queen there. In the bottom right corner on the wing, the queens get involved as well. Now, this is the enigma with the queens. I'm not quite sure what's going on with them. Now, it's well recorded that queens that don't reproduce but end up pulling the wings off, remember Pheidole colonies and stuff like that, that they will pull the wings off, like I said, and they will then act as majors or workers and do the work. Now, as you can see, one of the queens was just on the leg and she was getting dragged around and she was still holding on for dear life. And there's another queen there as well, walking all over the back of it as well, and now getting onto the arms. And there's another queen there as well, still playing with the leg. So as you can clearly see, they're getting involved. They've no fear of getting injured or anything like that. And there's a queen clamped onto the leg there as well, and watch her go back and forth. You know what I mean? They're proper getting involved. Now, and this is where the enigma comes from, because as far as I'm aware, that's not massively been recorded in Phiedole Nodas, that kind of behaviour with the queens. But do they still reproduce? Because I can't find one of the queens that I had. Remember when going way back that I noticed one of the queens had lost her leg and I thought they were going to kill her, but then fast forward a couple of months, the queen was still around happy. So I haven't seen her in the past couple of videos when I've done the female, so she might be dead. Now, if she's dead, potentially that means the original queens that I got are dead, but I'm still getting a turnover of workers and stuff like that. So the question then gets laid in my head is, well, are the queens that have been mated inside the nest then reproductives? But then again, if they're reproductives, why are they going out into the outworld? And the plot gets thicker as well, and I'll talk about that in a bit, but not yet. Now, this is just me playing with the new lenses, because the last video I just shown and this video here are both from the standoff macro lens, so it don't have to be as close, which means I can get good photos from outside the outworld, which is cool. So I'm just playing around with it, but I did take a lot of footage of this. If I remember and if I've got time, I'll stick a little bit something extra so you can see all the footage of them attacking this roach, which, to tell you the truth, is interesting, because yet again it's the behaviours that you get to observe. And there's a queen there again, another queen, 3 queens in one shot, 4 queens in one shot, all attacking this roach. I just don't understand it. I can't figure out what they're doing and why they're doing it. It confuses my fragile little mind. But anyway, back to about the queens. Now, I did something. This is a little setup that I've got. It's test tube, Outworld, general foundation style setup that I generally make. But you'll notice one thing about it. There's a Pheidole queen in the outboard. So I've seen some queens running around the outworld, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go for it and see what happens. So I collected 2 of the queens and a load of workers and a load of majors, because they're the larders, don't forget, and dumped them in the outworld, but let a test tube there so over the nest area if they choose to do that. Now, the 2 queens, you had this one here who's very much darker and still very active in the outworld, and I had a lighter coloured one that just had her wings pulled off because she had some of the wings still attached to her, very slightly though, and she was out in the outworld as well. So I wanted to see what would happen. Now, things just get even more confusing, because you would have thought, if anything, that either both queens will be cutting around the outworld or both queens will chill out in the test tube and settle down. But no, you can clearly see here, I've just put this little nymph cockroach in for them, and they go straight to it. The majors, this is a good bit of footage, to be honest, because you can actually see the majors cutting the legs off and taking it apart. I don't film a lot of this, but yet again, the queen, one of the queens, should say, is just getting in amongst it, as it were. So where is the other queen, you ask? Is she dead? No, she's not. She is in the test tube, and that is where she stays. This queen is blazing, she doesn't care, she'll be in the outworld fighting prey, as you can see. The other queen is just retreating straight into the test tube and stays there and doesn't come out. Now, this is where it gets even more complicated. Now, the younger queen, the more paler queen, and the one that's still got wings, as you can see it there, she is in the test tube, and that's where she stays. She's got a bit of an entourage with some workers and some majors chilling out there as well. But this is where it gets confusing. As you can see there, just as it comes to focus, she's laid eggs. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, that's great news, Hood, because that means that if she's laying eggs and all the others are laying eggs, and you've got a colony that is breeding within the nest, that's great news. And it is. But I still can't figure out the behaviour. If this is the case, she's reproductive, why was she in the outworld to start with? Why is she staying back laying eggs and the other one is chilling out in the outworld hunting and stuff like that, where she's clearly taken on the role as the main queen in the nest, being looked after and catered to and laying eggs? But that's if these brood develop into adult workers and not male drones, if she's fertile. So at the moment I don't know, but it's the change in behaviour, the difference in behaviour. I can't figure it out. Now, and you see what I mean about her wings as well, which you've just seen, is that she's still got partial wings, so it indicates to me she's a young queen, where the other queen is a lot darker, no wings at all, so I'm surmising she's an older queen. But why is the difference in behaviour? Why? Now, what I would like to do to try and get that point is get this queen here and put her in another test tube, another Outworld, and see if she will then settle down and then lay eggs. But I don't particularly want to do that because I'm kind of more interested to see the relationship that develops with the two queens here if she does produce workers and not just drones. So, but then again, that kind of puts me on what is their behaviour, why is this behaviour evolved, as it were, or I know they're in captivity, they may act differently, but I'm kind of guessing that the queens might go out into the Outworld to rally some workers, and that's why when the queens are out there it's generally fairly busy, even if there's no food, as it were, rally workers and then go off and make a satellite nest somewhere. But then if they're going off and making satellite nests, why is she just there attacking this roach and not settle down into the brackets satellite nest that I've made for them and started reproducing and started producing workers? I just don't get the behaviour. I don't understand it. I want to, and to tell you the truth, this is what I love about this hobby, is because we're seeing stuff like this and I don't know anything about it, if it's a common thing. I have not read anything that explains this behaviour, but to me it's super interesting. And I'm really keen to see where it goes. I think if they do produce workers and form a satellite nest, as it were, I may reconnect them to the main nest, because if it's a satellite nest and not just a completely different nest, then they should just work together again and just form the two nests, as it were, as happens in wild with a lot of other species of ants. But anyway, I'll leave it at that for this video, I think, because I've talked enough and got enough questions that are confusing me. Now, I'd love for you guys to leave your comments down below, tell me what you think's going on here with the queens, because I'm frankly a little bit confused, slightly excited, because it's really interesting. Now, I hope you guys like my new lenses, and there's a picture of them here. If anyone's asking, they're shift cam and they're the macro lens set. I think they're about 175 quid or something if you want to check them out. I would have never been able to afford these lenses if it wasn't for my Patreon supporting me. So a big massive thanks to Adam W, Adrian, Antantics, Anton the Rock, Antimatter, David D, Jason W, Kevin R, Paul A, Pavant, PJ Grant and Wakushi. Without your support I won't be able to do this, so thank you. If you want to become a Patreon, there'll be a link in the description below. But that's it for me today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video and I'll see you in my next one. Bye bye for now.